Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of the Power of Your Mind podcast. You're listening to episode number 145. I'm Victoria Gallagher, Law of Attraction hypnotist and #1 best-selling author of Practical Law of Attraction. Align yourself with the manifesting conditions and successfully attract your desires. I'm also the founder of HipTalk.com and HypnoCloud apps, which gives you access to over 500 hypnosis recordings right in the palm of your hand. So be sure to download that app from the app stores today. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Dr. Yishai Barkhordari. He is an awe-inspiring psychologist, adaptability coach, and consultant to entrepreneurs and business leaders. He is the host of the Business Couch with Dr. Yishai podcast. He is an adaptability hacker. Dr. Yishai's background, experience, and expertise in psychology have provided him a rare window into the minds and motivations of people at work, in business, and in everyday life. Dr. Yishai leverages his deep psychological training and experience to help entrepreneurs and business leaders to transform challenges and exhaustion into energy, excitement, and excellence for themselves and their businesses. What if every reaction and emotion could be an empowering guide instead of your Achilles heel? And he can be found at the Business Coach with Dr. Yishai podcast and also on Facebook /Dr. Yishai. And today, Dr. Yishai Barkhordari is going to be sharing some of his insights on the simple guide to creating happiness. So welcome to the show, Dr. Yishai.
Thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you. And we had such an amazing, intimate, wonderful, insightful, deep, philosophical conversation on your show. And so I'm really excited to have you on my show and we can further our conversation, but with you as the leading star of this episode. So I'm really, really excited.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. And I am really happy to be here. And we're all about diving into that today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, well, let's just kind of dive in a little bit and find out a little bit about your background, your history, like how it was that you went from wherever you were, where were you, and then you were able to uncover the key to understanding and creating happiness. Tell me how you arrived at that.
Yeah, so it's a really long story. It starts when I was born. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but I'll give you a few snapshots. So one thing that I came to realize, and it really wasn't into like my later mid or late 20s, that I really realized uh, that I'm a sensitive person. I was born that way. I'm just kind of genetically that way, perhaps. There could be a lot of different reasons or factors that contributed to it, but ultimately what that means is that when I have feelings or emotions, when I have reactions of any kind, they're big. And if most people, it's like a 0 to 10, one of the things about sensitive people is we tend to experience it on a 0 to 100, and usually it's somewhere between the 80 to 90 range. And so it can be really hard for people to relate to that. It's also really hard, especially it was as a child, because when I would have those reactions and the experiences that we have when we're feeling something or when we're reacting or when we're having an emotion, it shows up in our bodies. And we physiologically, we experience those sensations in our bodies. And so for me, those sensations, those reactions were so big, I had no idea how to handle them. I mean, can you imagine being a 4 or 5 or 7-year-old and having that happen? And so one story, one example of that I really like to share because it's so iconic for me is that I was about 7 years old and I was with a bunch of friends. We were playing on a pool table, not like a billiards table, not playing pool because we were just like 7 or 8, but we were just kind of rolling the balls around. And I didn't realize because I had never seen a pool table before, I had curled my fingers over the edge. And then someone was kind of throwing a ball around and hitting other balls, and one of the balls hit my hand.
Ow.
Yeah,
Ow.
and it
It gave
wasn't
me
like,
chills thinking about that, how that would hurt
yeah,
your knuckles and ugh.
yeah, and the obviously we weren't like using the pool sticks, but we were really throwing them around, and so it didn't just kind of tap it; it like really smashed my hand to a degree. I mean, fortunately, there was no lasting damage, no broken bones. But what I felt in my body was I got so angry. I was so hurt and so angry that I grabbed a pool ball and I hurled it so hard at my brother's head that it tore a 2-foot crater in the wall behind him. And I was lucky that it didn't actually hit him.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. We're both lucky. Could
Yeah. I mean, he kind of saw it coming, so I'm really fortunate that way. My brother's older than me. He had faster reflexes at the time. But in that moment, another massive set of reactions showed up. My brother, like I said, he was older than me. He's also much bigger than I am. Like today, I'm like 5'10", and my brother's 6'3" or something, 6'2", 6'3". And that's kind of reflective of what it was like when we were younger, except when we were like 7 or 8. He was like 6 inches taller than me or something. I mean, he was bigger, always was. And when we were younger, we were, let's say, we had a lot of conflict because we were really close in age. And so it wasn't always the most pleasant of relationships. And I was really scared sometimes. And in that moment, I was petrified that he was going to come after me. I mean, I had just nearly took this guy's head off.
yeah.
And, and so I was petrified. I was also so ashamed and so embarrassed. And there were like a half a dozen or a dozen of our friends around. And I was like, nobody wants to be my friend anymore. All of this in the space of a heartbeat. I'm having all these massive reactions. I burst out crying. I tear out of the room. Tears are streaming down my face. I've got the ugly cry going, snot coming out of my nose, And I did
Oh.
the one thing that I could do at that time, or I knew to do, which is I went in and I hid.
Mm.
I went and I found somewhere to hide. And we were actually at a friend's house. I hid so well that people couldn't find me for 4 hours.
Oh wow.
In fact, my memory is they had to call my parents, and the cops might have shown up at some point. It was like people were really afraid of what might have happened, where I might have gone. And so I didn't mention this before. I'm Orthodox Jewish. This happened on a Saturday. On Saturday, we don't use phones or electronics. So that was an even bigger deal. It was like, oh God.
Oh my goodness. So what was going on for you when you were hiding? Like what were you thinking and feeling? And I mean, were you scared? Like what was going on?
I mean, all of those and more. So I like to say now that humans have the capacity, we have the ability to experience not only, but upwards of 10 emotions at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was definitely in all of those. I was totally overwhelmed. I was still enraged. I was in a lot of pain. I was so upset. I was afraid. I was ashamed and embarrassed. I felt so guilty. And I was also so frustrated with myself. In that moment, in that time that I was hiding, and I had all these terrible thoughts coming through my brain. No one loves me. No one cares about me. I'm never going to have any friends again. You know, I, and I kept having these images of what might have happened if my brother didn't duck in time, and what my parents are going to say. And how could I ever come back from something like that? And in that moment, I swore to myself, I swore that I would never let it happen again. And I said, my emotions are dangerous. They hurt me. They hurt people around me. And I got lucky that it didn't. Later on, I kind of joked that if there was like a baseball scout there, I might have ended up in like the minor leagues or the major leagues. But really, it was one of the biggest, most difficult experiences for me. It was such an explosion of so many different emotions. And on the 0 to 10, it felt like they were on the 90 to 100 range. And what I took away from that was I can never let that happen again. And so I'm going to fast forward a little bit. When I got to high school, by the time I got to high school, I spent a lot of time between that age of 7 and high school learning to shut down my emotion system. I felt at the time, I was like, oh, I got a handle on this. I can just turn them off when they get too intense or too difficult. I'll just shut it down. And I got really good at that. And I was actually very proud of myself for that. I was like, I got a handle on this. Now I was still having from time to time these big reactions, but they weren't really kind of blowing things up in the same way, at least from my vantage point. But where that got me to was in high school, I found myself depressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
mean, like, really depressed, totally stuck, can't get out of anything. And it wasn't until much later that I came to realize that I was depressed because clamping down so hard on my emotions left me really numb. I couldn't get to experience the joys, the excitement, the happiness. I also wasn't experiencing as much of the frustration and anger and even anxiety. And I wasn't really able to experience those things. And as it turns out, it took me from that age of 7, it took me 25 years. I got a doctorate in psychology. I spent over a decade in therapy. I mean, this was like, it wasn't something that I could maybe figure out on my spare time. It was like do or die. Like, if I don't figure this out, I don't have a life to live. I won't have
Yes.
friendships. I don't know how I can build or retain relationships. I had so many relationships fall apart. And in later years, I've said this to my parents, I've said this to my siblings, I said this to my whole family. I was not an easy kid to be around. Can you imagine having somebody around who can unexpectedly have these giant reactions that just totally explode out of nowhere? Like, how do you have a stable relationship with someone like that?
That would be very difficult. Very
It's really
difficult.
hard.
Yeah.
And they had no idea when or why or how it can happen or what could happen, right? So like, and I think that's a very common experience for any of you who are sensitive, or if you are a parent of a sensitive kid. The big thing that shows up is, why is that happening? Like, I don't understand. And so for me, understanding it wasn't an option. It was a necessity to survive. And now it's become my way of thriving.
Yeah. How many kids grow up in that situation? Like, how many kids are really, sensitive like that?
It's a great question. I don't have the exact statistics, so I don't want to quote something incorrect,
Mm-hmm.
but I do know that it's a lot more people than we think.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. So, well, I mean, congratulations for having the wherewithal and the persistence and the determination and the, just to finally break through that. So, you spent time like that from the time you were 7, and it's amazing how like impressionable we are at 7 years old.
Hmm.
That is something that could happen in an instant. I mean, that situation just changed the entire trajectory of your life in that
Yeah.
instant, and it wasn't your fault. How could it
Hmm.
possibly be your fault? Because I mean, you're 7 years old, you don't know any better, you don't know how to handle emotions, especially deeply sensitive emotions that are more powerful than most people know what to do with, especially little kids.
Yeah.
And of course your only option in that moment was like, well, I that's dangerous, I'm not going to go there, I'm not
Hmm.
going to almost kill my big brother or
Hmm.
anybody else for that matter. Look what can
Yeah.
happen. So I mean, for you to you could have gone in so many different directions with that, and but later understood that was the key to you being depressed, and you had kind of almost like an awakening and awareness. Like, how did that, what was was there a key defining moment that you went from like, I'm not gonna restrain my emotions anymore, because restraining my emotions is making me depressed,
Mm.
to I'm how did you come to that, that awareness, and what did you do to become free of that?
Mm. Yeah, so those are such great questions. I'll say there are 2 points that are really important. One is that when I found myself in that depressed place, I really had the fortune. It was incredible. And I really thank my parents for this. They recognized by the time I got to high school, they noticed that something really I was really struggling and something wasn't going very smoothly for me. And they brought up the idea of me seeing a therapist. And I will
Mm,
say, as a teenager, I was like, no, 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 oh God, no, absolutely not. And it took a while, and they did a lot of patient educating and sharing, and also there was a lot of it that was setting boundaries, making it really clear that even though I was a teenager, that it would be really confidential. I was concerned, they're going to send me to a therapist, and the therapist is going to be giving reports to my parents about what I was doing or thinking. And what if I shared something that was really hard, or, I'm really kind of in the darkness. And so I really had the fortune of my parents really having the foresight to do that and the patience to sit with me and to talk about it. So I was in therapy for a really long time, and I really have tremendous gratitude for the therapy that I had. So that at that time, the realization I had was clamping down on my feelings didn't get me anywhere. It got me stuck. It literally didn't get me anywhere. It did get me stuck. And that's when I realized, look, I need to find another way. And it was after high school, I took a year to go to seminary to go learn abroad. And one of my goals for that time was to figure out, what am I going to do in college? What am I going to major in? And where do I want to go with my life? And what really came to me, I was doing a tremendous amount of thinking and processing and trying to make sense of what I was feeling and what do I do about all these feelings, especially the ones I've been clamping down on for years. And one of the things that occurred to me is, look, I need to study this stuff. So I decided to go into psychology. I got my bachelor's in psychology and sociology. And then I went into a doctorate program. I said, I'm going to learn about this stuff. I'm going to figure it out. And if I have to, if I'm going to become a psychologist along the way, because I got to figure this out, then so be it. Um, and also I found that as I was learning, that I found that I really had this affinity for working with people and connecting with them and helping them. And that became really meaningful to me as well. So there's a lot of different reasons that kind of contributed to that. The second thing, as you were talking about the journey and how do I get through it? How did I get to the other side of that? In addition to going to therapy, which I would very much recommend for someone who's in that difficult place, who's really struggling with something like depression. Um, the other thing that I really came to is after I got my doctorate and I was starting to work full time. So during my doctorate program, I worked with patients, I worked with clients, I did full-time work for a year, and then I got my PhD. After that, in my kind of postdoctoral residency, I was starting to see 20, 30, 35 patients a week. And it was during that time I had all this training. I was doing, so many of the different methods, modalities of therapy. Something else that started to show up a lot, though, is that so many of the ways that therapists work, they don't talk as directly about feelings, have purpose in doing that. And so I started asking those questions, and I started seeing and noticing these patterns. And what came up, what I realized, is that emotions aren't random. They show up under very specific conditions. People don't get angry when they walk into a restaurant, order their favorite meal, have it delivered to them, and enjoy it. They're not angry, but they are angry when somebody disrespects them
mm-hmm.
or gets in their way. And so I started to notice that. And I also started asking those questions. Well, what might that emotion be trying to do? If we could assume for a moment that it had purpose, what is it trying to do? And those ways of thinking have really transformed everything.
Yeah, as a hypnotherapist, and also as an NLP practitioner, we talk about intentions of the negative behaviors and the negative feelings. Every behavior has a positive intention, and but that so it's coming from, I believe, that emotion, it has something positive that is trying to help us with. It's really it's really protecting us and preventing us from feeling even worse or doing something even worse. So it's amazing, that you were able to stumble upon that, and what was the purpose for you? What was the purpose that your feelings were trying to, what were your feelings trying to express?
I mean, so many different things in so many places. Like I said, emotions, we can experience upwards of 10 of them. And from my viewpoint, each one has a different job. And so one of the things I think that is slightly different from the way you were expressing it in terms of your background and hypnotherapy is not just, I don't see any emotion as negative. I see it as uncomfortable. And the difference is every emotion is trying to help us. It's trying to get us to look at something. It's trying to get us to address something and our behavior is not the same as the emotion. An action is different than a feeling. And not all actions are helpful, but emotions are really trying to, and sometimes they push us and we end up acting in ways that don't end up being helpful. And I think that's usually because they're missing the purpose. They miss the boat on what the purpose of the emotion is. So if you want to pick one emotion, I'm happy to talk about it.
Sure. Well, let's pick the emotion of anger.
Yeah. So anger for me really showed up. For example, when I had my fingers curled over the edge of that pool table, it showed up because I had this line that had gotten crossed. And that line was my body got hurt and somebody else had done something that hurt my body. Now, it didn't matter that they didn't intend it. What mattered is that my line, my safety got crossed and I was in pain. And that pain was telling me that my hand wasn't safe. It got hurt. And so what the anger was really pointing me at was, it's not okay for this to happen. I can't allow this to happen again, or I don't want to allow it to happen again if I don't defend, protect, or secure. And I really think about it as securing more than just defending or protecting. If I don't secure that boundary or that line, if I don't ensure that I get to experience safety, that people are aware that my body is not okay to hurt, then I could get hurt anytime or all the time. People will give themselves permission to do that. So that's what my anger was telling me. That was its purpose. I find that that's often the purpose when anger shows up. It shows up because we have a line that's crossed. And so that doesn't happen, like I said before, when we order our favorite food from our favorite restaurant and it shows up in the time frame that we want it to. We don't get angry because no lines got crossed.
It's so true. Yeah.
But if somebody cuts me off, oh, they crossed a line. And you better believe that there's anger there. Now, does that mean I need to, get on the road rage and honk the horn? Is that going to help the situation? Maybe not. At the same time, what is my anger telling me? My anger might be saying to me that it's not safe. It might be saying that I thought I had more space or that it's dangerous if I don't have that space. Or it might be saying, look, I'm in a rush. And cutting me off is getting in the way of me getting to where I want to go at the time frame that I really want or need to. So all of those could be addressed.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So in today's topic of just kind of resetting here, the simple guide to creating happiness, let's make a little bit of a segue and bridge from what we're talking about, the things that you experienced that led you down this path to understanding how to create happiness for other people. So how can a person create happiness for themselves?
Yeah, I really think that the answer to that actually very much follows from what we were just talking about. Because what I was saying is that all emotions show up under specific conditions and they have a purpose. So because they do. If we can reverse engineer that for happiness, if we can understand what that is for happiness, then you can create it. And it becomes very simple. So I'm going to break that down for you because I've done this. I've asked this question of lots of people, and I've done the legwork. I've done the homework. I put it all together for you. Happiness shows up when we have one of the following four things. We have a want, a need, a goal, or a dream that is met.
So a want is number one. A need, I mean, I don't necessarily mean they're in any particular order, but so we have to have the four things: want, the need, a goal, and is dream and met. So which is
So it's any of them,
any of
not
those?
all of them.
Any of them. Okay.
Yeah. If any of those is met, then we experience happiness.
Got it. Okay. So a want
Happiness,
is met,
the way
a
I
need
think,
is met, a goal is met, or a dream is met. Any of those are the key to happiness.
yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to explain that. I'm going to, kind of pop the hood. We're going to open up and pick that apart a little bit, and then I'll show you how you can do that.
Okay.
I'll even give you an exercise.
Awesome.
So the reason that happiness shows up, like I said, all emotions have purpose. So the reason that happiness shows up under those circumstances is happiness's job. Its purpose is to point me, to help me learn and understand, and to point me and teach me and show me and pull me to do the things that meet my wants, my needs, my goals, and my dreams. That is the purpose of happiness. Why is happiness fleeting? Because we have lots of wants and needs and goals and dreams. And when we meet them, there's another one often waiting for us. Hopefully, sometimes, often a bigger one if it's a goal or a dream. And if it's a want or a need, we may get it. We may experience happiness, but that doesn't stop us from having more wants or more needs. That's part of what makes things complicated with happiness. That's also why happiness is this kind of elusive thing for most people to try to nail down. So I'll give the example. Let's say I get off of work at the end of a very long day and I haven't eaten in 7 hours because it was such a crazy day. So I get off of work and I'm on my way home. And as I'm on my way home, I see my favorite restaurant. What is happiness going to do? Well, my hunger, first of all, is before my happiness, right? My hunger is going to tell me, take the exit, go there and order some food. So I go and do that. And I order the food, I sit down and I take that first bite. What emotion shows up?
Happiness.
Happiness. What did I just have happen?
Maybe.
What did I just have happen?
You had either a need or a want.
Yeah.
Or a dream. It could be a dream also.
It could be that too, right? I might have been dreaming about it for 7 hours.
Right.
I've had at least a need met, my need for food.
Yeah.
I may have had a want met also. I really want my favorite food, or I really want my favorite restaurant. Okay. Now, guess what happens the next time I'm getting off of work? I haven't had dinner yet, even if I had a full lunch. And I'm driving down the road and I see the sign for that same restaurant. What does my emotion system do? It says, why don't you pull off? Yeah, get down that exit, go there, right? That's your happiness in action. Your happiness, what it said is, this is a way you met your want, your need, or your goal or your dream. So next time you have a want, a need, or goal or dream, it brings that thought back up to you. So understanding this is why and how and the purpose of happiness, now we can reverse engineer it. You want to experience more happiness? Here's your exercise. Take a piece of paper.
Got it.
Draw a line down the middle. And on the left, put down want, need, goal, dream. Put that at the top.
And put that at the top on the left.
Top on the left.
Okay. Want, need, goal, dream. And that's at the top on the left. Okay?
At the top on the left. And you're going to spend the whole left side of the paper. And this exercise may take a while, so please let it take a while, come back to it, do it 3 or 4 times. You can even do it on a regular basis. Sometimes I like to, just take the time to think about it for a little bit, even on a weekly basis. Could even be on a daily basis. In fact, I wake up every morning and I ask myself, what's one goal that I want, to meet today.
Mm-hmm.
And now I am I'm bringing up my happiness to pull me in that direction. And when I meet that goal or make steps towards that goal, what do I experience?
Happiness.
Happiness, right? So on the left side of that paper, you're going to write down your want, your need, your goal, your dream.
Okay.
And you
As
can put
many as you want, as many as
as
come to your
many
mind.
as you want, as many as you want. In fact, it's usually helpful to start by brainstorming. Just write down all the ones you've had met before. What are the moments you've been happy before? What wants or needs have you met in the past? What are the ones that if you could meet them in the future would be just the best experience ever? You would feel so happy, right? And you don't even have to just think about it on that axis. Think about your wants, your needs, your goals, your dreams. Write them down.
And
If you
do
want to
you
get
recommend like that what like putting a mixture of small things as well as big things on there, or
Yeah, it's a great question. So the reason I kind of break it into wants, needs, goals, and dreams is
mm-hmm,
that our goals and dreams can be bigger things. They
mm-hmm,
often are bigger things, and they can take multiple steps.
mm-hmm,
Our wants and needs, sometimes they do take multiple steps. They can get complicated to fulfill,
mm-hmm.
right? And so there's a little bit more to the exercise.
Okay.
But absolutely, look, if we only have small wants or needs or goals or dreams that are met, but we don't have bigger ones, or we're not pursuing bigger ones, then we might find ourselves running out. We're getting maybe bored or wondering, is there more to this? So the point
Right.
you're bringing up, I think, is a really great one. So that first step is to really just write down as many of them as you can think of, and then pick 2 to 4 of them, maybe some small ones, maybe some big ones. Try to get as concrete as you can. And on the left side, make a plan.
Okay. Actually,
Set a
you mean on
time.
the right side.
Sorry, on the right side. Yes. Thank you. On the right side, on the top of the right,
Mm-hmm.
plan.
Plan.
This is my plan to meet those things.
Plan to meet. So I want food. My plan is to get in the car and go get food.
Yeah, there you go. Right? The plan is get into the
Go to the
car,
refrigerator and
yes.
take out the ingredients and cook it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And then what that allows you to do is now you're going to have a list of actions and steps.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about your big goals? Because I would, and part of the reason why I was saying make it a mixture of some big goals and small goals is, for me, I might have a tendency to start the list with, I want $1 million.
Sure, you get to want that.
Not to laugh that off. That's absolutely possible, but it's there's probably
That's
a
a
few more
dream.
steps. There's
That's
still,
a dream.
few more steps involved in that than going and getting the smaller things.
Sure. Right. And I'm not advocating that anybody put, I want $1 million. How do I plan to get it? I go rob a bank. That's not what I'm recommending. Right. To be very clear, right? When you are pursuing your wants, your needs, your goals, your dreams to create more happiness in your life, it's important to, and I think you're really pointing this out, it's important to, 1, be realistic. And 2, when there is something very big, to acknowledge that it's a dream. It could be a want. It might even be a goal. And when you do that, it's really important to break that down into smaller steps that are very likely to increment you towards that goal. So even if your goal is, or your want or your dream, right? Maybe even the need, for whatever the reason is, that it's $1 million. Okay, so break that down. Well, if you are, for example, if you are a business and you sell services, how many services do you need to sell? At what price? Okay, how do you acquire customers or clients? How do you move in that direction? Right? How do you move yourself towards that $1 million? Now, here's the other thing that's really important to do. If you really want to experience and create more happiness in your life, is every time you meet one of those wants, those needs, those goals, those dreams, take a pause, savor the experience, allow that to sink in. So there's a difference, let's say, even when the dream is $1 million. Celebrate
the manifestation is what I call that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to
Celebrating it.
acknowledge it. You've got to acknowledge, you got
Hmm.
to be grateful for it.
Yes. In fact, there's an interesting practice in the culture that I grew up in of the first dollar or the first sale that's made
Mm.
gets framed and put up on the wall. And what that serves is as a reminder of, I did this thing. And then the next time you get to look at that and say, I did it once, I did it the first time, and the first time's the hardest, or I didn't know what I was doing that first time. And now I might want many more of them. Maybe the first one's a $20 bill, right? And so you have a $20 bill up on the wall, and you can tell yourself, I made one.
Mm.
Now I can go make more, and I'm getting better at it, or I can work at getting better at it. So when you have a dream or you have a big want or a big goal, it is important to break that down to savor or celebrate those steps towards that, right? And so that's sometimes what I like to say is if there's a dream, if there's something really big and it's not easy to go get in 1 or 2 or 3 or even 5 steps, there's not going to just take a few minutes or even hours or days. Then make that a dream, break that down into goals, break those goals into steps, break those steps down into what do you need to make each of those steps happen, and then allow each of those steps to be something you want to accomplish in order to, when you accomplish a step, you get a want. When you make sure you're getting your wants, you're fulfilling the needs in order to hit the goals to get your dreams.
Yeah, I like that. I like that you, uh, I, I like that you broke it down to make sure that the steps are something that you want to be doing because, to me, I also feel like another key to our unhappiness is to have a goal or a dream that the only way you can fulfill that or the only way you think that you can fulfill that is by doing things that you don't want to do because then you're
Mm-hmm.
spending your time doing things that you don't want to do and
Mm-hmm.
chasing after something in a way that doesn't make you feel good. I think that all of these need to be in alignment. The want, the need, the goal, the dream, having it all in alignment. And like you say, um, it's interesting because I can almost like even what I teach is so much different than what you teach, but I there's an alignment here though
Mm-hmm.
between the just it's just stating it in a different way. You said take a pause. Well, I say celebrate the manifestation or acknowledge it, and that way you're actually able to feel the happiness of having achieved it. And so I think that's great. We have to have the plan. You got to take action on it, but the action steps need to be an inspiring thing,
Yeah.
not some drudgery thing that you're ending up spending 8 hours of your life doing something that you don't really want to do just to make $1 million. It's
Yeah.
all got to be in alignment. You got to, you know, want, uh, you know, you have to want to be doing what you're doing. Wayne Dyer used to talk about, or was it John Gray? I can't remember, but it was like um, loving what you have and having what you, or loving what, desiring what you want and wanting what you desire, or something like that. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
the exact words, but it's appreciating ultimately what you do have
Mm-hmm.
as a way of um, as a way of being happy now in the
Mm-hmm.
moment and creating even more. One of my pods just gave out. I've been on pods, my AirPods. So I don't know if the next one will give out, but I'm just gonna grab the wired ones just in case. All right, so we have some on standby here. So this does seem like a pretty simple step for happiness,
Mm-hmm.
and would you? I mean, is it any more to it than that? I mean, is that basically the key? Like, What about people who are constantly, trying to achieve goals and always working on their plan and that, but they end up feeling unfulfilled or
Mm,
unhappy in the end. Um, how somebody's achieved great entrepreneurship.
mm,
Many of our people here are entrepreneurs.
mhm,
What would you say is blocking blocking a person from feeling happy if
mm,
they're great achievers. They check
mhm.
off those they go for their plans. They want all of that. Like what are some of the
Mhm.
pitfalls that get in the way of happiness?
Yeah, it's a great set of questions and a great point. So I think there are a couple of
I'm
things that
like
are.
one of these rapid fire ask 3 questions at a time.
Mhm.
Sorry about that.
No, they're very important, and I think they add a lot of context. So in that context, I think what's really important to recognize, and I mentioned this before, is it's not something you do the exercise once and now you have them all and you just need to do them, right? Many wants and needs. We have many wants and needs, and they tend to follow each other. So meeting one isn't going to always just fulfill us forever. So one is an acknowledgement of that. And in that acknowledgement, it's important to do that exercise, not just once, but even on a consistent or repeated basis. So if every emotion has a purpose, if you're not experiencing happiness, it means that there are wants or needs or goals or dreams that you have that are not being fulfilled.
Mhm.
And you may not be aware of them
Mhm.
until you're fulfilling some wants, some needs, some goals and dreams, and you are experiencing perhaps some happiness, and there are other things you're not having met. Unhappiness, if you want to think about it as the other side of that coin, shows up when we have unmet wants, needs, goals, or dreams. So if you're unhappy in what you're doing, or if you don't feel as happy as you think you would have, instead of saying, I should feel happy, why am I not feeling happy? And being hard on yourself about it, ask yourself, what is my happiness telling me, or my unhappiness telling me, or trying to tell me? How can I look at my life, parts of my life? For some people, for example, let's say they're achieving, they're getting their way to, or they've made their first $1 million, they made their new goal of 2 million. The next year they get to 2 million. The next year they get to 4, right? So they're growing year after year in this huge, that's astronomical growth. Isn't that so exciting? So great. Why aren't they happy? Well,
Mhm.
what does the rest of their life look like? How many hours a day do they work? If you are working so many hours that you have other needs you're not able to meet, I'll give you some hints. If you are not sleeping well, you have some need that is not being met. If you are not taking your time to eat, then you have needs that are not being met. If you're not engaging in relationships in a way that's meaningful, you have a need that is not being met. Connection is a need. So we have a lot of different needs. This is where it can get very complicated. And a lot of people try to just chase the happiness. Well, it's important to slow down and think about and be intentional. What are the needs that you have? I like to focus on needs first, because if we don't have our needs, a lot of the other stuff doesn't matter,
Mhm.
or it can be very hard, right? So people tend to be most irritable, most upset, have them be really struggling when they have basic needs or even complex needs that just aren't being met. So start with those needs. Are you eating? What are you eating? How are you eating? Is the food you're eating nourishing to you? Nourishing to your body? Because that's what your body needs. Your body doesn't just need you to cram calories. Your body needs you to provide nourishment. That's a need, right? So one thing to go back to is to recognize there are a lot of different domains. There are a lot of different parts of our lives. There are a lot of different needs that we have. So starting there. Add on top of that some wants. If you don't get to go get your favorite meal from time to time, whether it's because you don't have the time or resources are low, whatever the reason is, if you don't get to have that, if you are starving yourself of your wants, then life can feel as though it's not such a great place to be. Because on top of our needs, it's great to have some of our wants. If we don't have goals, if we're not stretching ourselves, beyond our current comfort, for not reaching for something more. If we don't have dreams, reaching for something huge, right? If we don't have something to point us towards, which is what goals do, and something to really stretch ourselves, to look all the way into the sky and say, I want to make it there, dreams, then we're not going to point ourselves and we're not going to try to reach further. And those are very important. So I think it's important to, if you're not experiencing as much happiness as you'd like, to take the time. Maybe you grab not just one paper, but a few sheets of paper, put different topics on top. Maybe one is my relationships. Maybe one of them is my food. Maybe one of them is my body, in terms of working out, or, taking care of my body in other ways. Or maybe one of them is, my business or my resources, my finances. Maybe another one is the space around me, living space or working space. If it's all cramped and there are all these things in the way and I keep bumping into things, that can get in the way. Or what might you want?
So it's important, it sounds like, to really balance out between the wants, the needs, the goals, and the dreams. Like, we can't just be happy, just just only fulfilling needs, but ignoring wants, goals, and dreams. And conversely, we can't be happy just having big dreams, pie in the sky dreams, or accomplishing a few goals here and there, but completely ignoring our needs, like you said, our need for sleep, our need for connection, our need for just taking good care of ourselves. So we need to have somewhat of a balance. And you said it
I would
sounds like.
actually
Go ahead.
really push back on that. I think we can experience happiness. Again, let's look at happiness. Happiness shows up when we have those things met. So if you're unhappy, then that's pointing at something that's unmet. So it's not that you can't experience happiness. If you're meeting a bunch of your needs or all of your needs, you can experience happiness during those moments or for those needs. There may be other things that you are very unhappy about. And those are indicators that in order to experience happiness in those parts of your life, then yes, you need to focus or add them. Okay. So for some people, their basic needs are all they need to be just chipper, just totally happy.
All right? That makes
I've got
sense.
my needs. I'm good. I don't need to, maybe that is the dream, right?
I'm glad that you corrected me on that, because I was having this little moment of like, oh, it's all, it's a balance, and I always like to create some sort of a structure for understanding that, and so that was my structure for getting that. And so it sounds like, I wonder if you want to speak to whether it's possible for us to feel happy as well as unhappy at the same time.
Yes, we absolutely can. And to speak to the point you were making earlier, as far as balance goes or structure, I think about it as I turn it around. Happiness tells you and shows you something. It is not a consequence. It's not just a result. It's there to give you information. It's there to point you. It has purpose. So if you want more of it, then tapping into that purpose is helpful. But if you're not experiencing it, that means that there is something that is important, that you want, that you need to move towards. So, and to come back to the point you were making, yes, we can be both happy and unhappy. We can be happy and angry at the same time. We can be sad and happy at the same time. And there's a lot of different ways in which we can be those things. I think one thing a lot of people do, I call it emotional pitting or emotion pitting. It's what I call an emotional distortion. It's this way that we think that you can only feel one thing at a time. So if you're happy, then you can't be upset or sad or unhappy. You know what? If I am drinking my favorite drink and I'm having a wonderful time of that, and I hear news about something terrible that happened, I can feel unhappy and I can feel happy. They're just about different things. I might be still thoroughly enjoying my drink. That might be difficult. I might be distracted. It's hard sometimes to attend to more than one emotion at a time. Though I will say, if I hear terrible news, I might feel sad rather than I'm just unhappy. Because unhappy is if I have a want, a need, or goal or dream that's unmet. So maybe if the news is about some goal that I missed or didn't meet, right? So we can feel disappointed and at the same time feel happy.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. And, especially if we have maybe two different areas in our life where, you're really happy that you crossed the marathon, uh, but then you're also really mad that you didn't see the person at the end of the marathon that you were hoping was going to be there
Mm-hmm.
congratulating you. So you're having, a kind of a want, an unmet want,
Mm-hmm.
but you're also happy that you just accomplished a goal.
Yeah, you can absolutely have both.
Yeah,
So many of us make the mistake of thinking we're not allowed to have one or the other.
mm-hmm.
Like, oh,
That,
I'm supposed to be happy and proud of myself. It's another emotion. So I'm not allowed to be mad because I did this marathon. Or I'm so mad that now I don't get to enjoy, I don't get to be happy with having completed the marathon.
Yeah, and I think it's so easy for us to talk ourselves into or out of certain emotions because of our thoughts about how we should be feeling too.
Mm,
We should be, I should be happy. So you kind of shove down that feeling of frustrated or disappointed or
mm-hmm,
sadness, and that of course leads to ultimately some unmet needs.
mm-hmm.
And so that's really really kind of a relief to hear that we can't we might actually we're very complex. I think we're more
Yes.
complex beings than we realize, and when we try to pigeonhole ourselves into any one emotion or any one thing, that's when a lot of these problems can really emerge. And so
Mm-hmm,
by having an acknowledgement for how dynamic we actually are, and an appreciation for the fact, this very simple formula of fulfilling wants, needs, goals, and dreams. I love it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. As you say that, it reminds me of one of my favorite moments in the Harry Potter series. I'm a big Harry Potter fan. One of my favorite moments in that entire series is that Harry is talking to Ron and Hermione about some interaction he had with Cho that was very confusing to him at the time that him and Cho were an item or potentially an item. There was all this angst about it. And he's talking about all this stuff that's going on and how he's confused. And then Hermione kind of begrudgingly explains that Cho is having all these different feelings. Well, she really likes Harry, but she's sad because of what happened with Cedric and he died. And she's got all these different feelings. And Ron's immediate reaction is no human being can experience those many feelings. They'd explode. And her answer is just because you think you have the emotional range of a teaspoon, that doesn't mean the rest of us are that way. Right. And so that really speaks to, yeah, it gets me every time. I love it.
I love it. Yeah.
Because it gets to how much we sometimes think in those terms. We hold these beliefs or these ideas, we pit our emotions against each other, and we use that to really clamp down on. And don't get me wrong, I'm an expert of clamping down. I did it for over a decade, right? So I learned a lot of ways to do that. And so I understand, and there's a lot of, in some ways, there's an allure to that, because if I could only tell myself I should feel happy, maybe I won't feel the other things and I'll feel happy. It's an attempt to do that. But again, emotions have purpose. They don't just show up at random, they show up under specific conditions. So when you understand the conditions, you can then say to yourself, actually, my emotions information, it's telling me what is going on and what isn't going on. And it can actually help direct me. I can extract something very meaningful from that, which is what we did today with happiness. You can understand the conditions under which it shows up and then reverse engineer it. And so if you're not happy, you get to say to yourself, oh, are there unmet wants, needs, goals, or dreams? And you get to write them down as we did in that exercise. And then you get to make a plan. And as you fulfill that plan, as you take steps and you meet those wants and needs and goals and dreams, as long as you're not clamping down or trying to get away from those feelings, which there's still some people who do. And again, I very much know that. As long as you're open to it, we talked about it as pausing and savoring or celebrating the manifestations, right? If you're able to, and when you make that choice to really sit in it and savor it, then yes, you're going to experience more happiness.
Wonderful. That was so well spoken, so well summarized that it really ties up this whole episode into a little bow. And I love that. It's been already an hour has gone by since our beginning, and it was
Mm-hmm.
such an enlightening, inspiring conversation. I always learn so much on this Power of Your Mind podcast, and I'm very particular and very selective about who I have on this show, and so I'm very excited that I was able to have you on the show. You've just helped really enlighten us and given us a gift here. And I want to just also give our viewers an opportunity, or listeners, to find out more about how they can dive even deeper into learning how to create more happiness in their lives with you. Is there, a call to action that you have that you'd like people to do to find out more about you and how to become more happy?
Thank you, Victoria. Yeah, it's been such a pleasure, and I'm really honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me here. And yeah, if you wanna create more of that, so I do work primarily with entrepreneurs and business leaders. So if you are interested in more of that in your business, or you want to transform the exhaustion into that energy, excitement, excellence, what can be more happiness, then you can find me through my website, dryishai.com, DRYISHAI.com. And you can book a time there. I would love to have a brief conversation with you. And it'll be, I call it an adaptability consulting call. So you can reach me that way. I would love to, have that brief time to connect to see if there's a way I can help, and perhaps a way that we can work in a deeper way to really help you learn how to do that, right? I know that we did a short, brief exercise today, and Victoria, you really pointed out how much more depth and how much more there is to it. A simple exercise can help you get started, but there are big things and small things. There are daily things. There are things that take them a lot longer, and it's not always easy to keep on those things. And so I like to think about myself. I know I talked about you at the beginning talked about adaptability hacking. I really think about what I do as hacking into how we can create more of what's important to us in our lives and in our businesses. So if you'd like to do that, feel free to, find me through that. Or if you'd like to listen and hear more, you can also check out my podcast, The Business Couch with Dr. Yishai. It's available on every platform.
Which is a great podcast, and I hear he has great guests on that podcast. Thank you so much for being on the Power of Your Mind podcast. And yes, definitely, take advantage of what he has shared with you. Go through this exercise on your own and take it to the next level. That your information will be in the show notes, so people can click through to your website and find out how they can take their lives and their happiness to the next level. Thank you so much.